Good morning and welcome everybody to the February 4th Arts and Culture Work Plan Discussion Meeting. We can go ahead and take roll call.
Sorry, I was muted. Commissioner Yank? Commissioner Vyar?
Here.
Commissioner Vidor?
Here.
Vice Chair Tufenkian?
Here.
Chair Zadorian?
Here.
Agenda item 1A, report of recorder, reposting of the agenda. The agenda for the February 4th, 2021 special meeting of the Glendale Arts and Culture Commission was posted on January 28th, 2021 on the bulletin board outside City Hall. Agenda item 2, introductions and presentations to A, Glendale Public Art Consultant Scope of Work 2021 to 2023, presented by Bo Bass, CEO of LaBass Projects Incorporated. So Bo, are you there? I'm going to hand it over to you. We're very excited to have you join us for today's meeting.
Yes, hello. Thank you, everybody. Nice to be with you all early this morning. Question for you, Jennifer. I have almost a draft of a presentation to go over with everybody. I don't know if that's something we can screen share or if everybody actually has a copy of it. And I can kind of just walk our way through it.
Sure, I have it up here as well. The commissioners also have been sent the presentation last night, so I will pull it up on my screen and we'll push forward through it.
Okay, great. So my team, I have Nikki Dixon from my team online today as well. We are very excited to get started on this sort of, it's not even one project. This is a whole campaign, the way we're looking at it, but our team is really excited to finally get started. Really looking forward to getting feedback from you all today and sort of just give you a brief on sort of how we're looking at approaching this project. I know we have time for me to sort of like present and for Q&A, but please, as we're going through this, if questions arise, don't hesitate to stop me. I'm happy to sort of like answer questions and sort of go through feedback and thoughts as we go through it. What we're going to sort of walk through today is really the bones of what will eventually be our strategic art plan for the overall project. And it's really the first step for our team to really properly prepare for these 10 landmark installations that we're intending to help deliver to the city of Glendale. Jennifer, we kind of go through, we can kind of skip through maybe to like page 3 and really just sort of, this copy is right from the public art plan, right? Glendale is this really growing city with a, sort of history and, a growing business and technology sector. I think what Glendale's done so far with its sort of public art plan is really proactive. I love the interactive map that's already there, and we're looking forward to sort of helping build on that with these landmark installations. We can keep going, I think, to... I'm not going to read all of the details. I really just kind of want to walk through it quickly so we can get time to sort of talk about, what your thoughts are. But again, our vision over the next 3 years is really to help deliver these sort of landmark installations. And while that is what we're tasked with, what we're really looking to do is help use these landmark installations as sort of a springboard to growing the arts and culture community across Glendale, both of what we're working on and beyond. And I think the sort of general steps is we really want to spend a lot of time developing a plan to, one, identify the locations of where the best sort of active locations for these artworks. We want to build a world-class artist pool for these installations, and then our team will ultimately help select and oversee the installation of the artworks. But again, really our focus is not just on one at a time of these artworks, but creating an overall plan so the artworks fit with the city, speak to the community of the city, are engaging for the city, residents and visitors to the city, and then really, again, become sort of a springboard for future art and cultural opportunities. We can keep going, Jennifer. So what we've already started working on here, and again, this document is really the very first sort of draft of what will eventually be a much more detailed strategic plan. And the reason we like to spend a lot of time at the beginning of our project like this is, rather than just jumping in and delivering project by project, we really want to have an overarching plan. We're going to be working on this for 3 years, and so we want to have the framework of both the administration, the management of this project, the coordination with the community, with the Arts and Culture Commission, really strategically thinking about the budget of these projects, the location of the artworks, and then really how to deliver this over 3 years. As we've seen over the last 9 months, a tremendous amount can change really quickly today. And we want to make sure that this strategic plan lays out the foundation for, how we can be flexible with artwork that's delivered, the first installations that are delivered to the last 3 years from now. So we really want to spend a lot of time developing a very strategic plan. We can skip one more, I think. Again, just sort of a snapshot of our process. And I'm already sort of talking about it, but really that first stage is our consulting. We want to know every detail about the city of Glendale. We want to figure out, and we're already starting to brainstorm how we engage the community in these sort of times of COVID-19. We can't do a lot of the in-person, on the street sort of meet and greets, canvassing that we would ordinarily. So we're really going to try to figure out some creative ways to engage the community about what they want to see reflected in the arts. We want to get a sense, and honestly, all of your help will be, I think, very integral for us to figure out which stakeholders we need to talk to, who in the city is important, what community groups we should be focusing on coordinating with, so that as we build this plan, we have a real sense of what the community is looking for. And that might be different, from neighborhood to neighborhood in Glendale. Of the 10 different installations, we might be able to target different things based on the communities in those neighborhoods. But that first step is really engaging the community and trying to figure out, especially right now, how to engage, how to get feedback when we can't actually really be in person with people. Once we kind of have heard from the community and put together our plan, the second step is really to curate the actual artworks. We use a combination, and we can get into more details in the next couple of pages, but a combination of RFP, direct commissions. Our job will be to steer artists that we think are highly qualified artists into this artist pool, and then also to canvas via an RFQ to see who's out there, who's local to Glendale, who else is in Los Angeles that we might have missed, so that we build a really strong artist pool and set of proposals that we can then work with the Arts and Culture Commission with to select final artworks. And then finally, it's really delivering the art. Our team, Luna's not here with us, but we've got a production director who works with fabrication and can really, on our team, really helps oversee a lot of the fabrication and installation. We've got internal, design teams so that we can help artists make sure we design and permit installations properly. But our team will help manage all of the fabrication, installation, and all the final documentation of these artworks. And then just sort of, again, some of this is repetitive, but as we build a strategic plan, and again, what I'm sharing with you today is the very outset of what will eventually be a much even more detailed strategic plan. And so that we're just, again, outlining the first thing is consulting with the stakeholders and community, right? We really want to coordinate with them. I think we can keep going, Jennifer. And then, again, our curatorial vision, we want to look at all 10 of these pieces, not just as individual artworks. We want to make sure that they're all different, but they all still have, sort of echo the voice of Glendale, have some sort of common boundaries. We want to make sure they all feel somewhat connected and a part of the city. We really want to make sure we have a diverse artist group. That is something that's been really important to our team. We're a minority-owned business enterprise. We've always worked with, a large percentage of the artists we work with in our projects are female and minority artists. And again, we want these artworks to reflect the residents of Glendale. So, we look at these as an opportunity to really shape the cultural landscape in the city. These are going to be 10 major artworks across the city. We want each piece to stand alone and be unique, but really enhance the overall vision of the city. Again, just sort of a little more detail about our sort of methodology. And these are the sort of 10 steps that Jennifer and I and Gary have been working into our general scope of work. And we've been putting together a timeline over the next 3 years. And again, some of them, I feel like I'm saying the same things over, but again, this is a little more detail. One is really developing our strategic plan, our project's goals, the timelines, the locations for the artwork. Step 2 is really, again, community engagement and canvassing. 3, we're going to recommend artwork types and mediums for each location. One might be a mural, one might be a technology installation, one might be a sculpture installation. Then we'll sort of create, publish, and oversee an RFQ and RFP process to sort of build our artist pool. Depending on those actual artist locations and the type of art we're looking for, it might be a combination of RFQ, RFP, direct commission, depending on the types of work. Once we build that pool, we really intend to work with the Arts and Culture Commission closely on making recommendations, getting feedback from you all, and sort of making those selections. Once we sort of hopefully select artists we feel good about, our team will support the drafting of their contracts. Again, I believe the city will hold all those contracts, but we will be working to try to make sure that the process is streamlined. Then we'll sort of manage the relationships with all the necessary stakeholders, right? So Arts and Culture Commission, City Council, and again, this is part through the artwork approval process and installation. We will work with engineers, fabricators on permitting, any approval processes necessary. Typically, again, like a mural isn't going to need a lot of permitting or a lot of engineering, but we're expecting these installations to all be fairly large, fairly complicated, and we expect there to be multiple rounds of engineering approvals, city planning approvals, and so we'll help streamline all of that. We'll oversee, and again, we won't be actually managing the fabrication. That will be on the artist studios, but our job will be to make sure things are being delivered on budget, we're staying on timelines, and our team will coordinate with the artist to make sure we're hitting milestones. And then eventually the actual installation. And then finally, we want to make sure that all of these artworks are vetted by conservators and maintenance professionals. And we have a couple of conservators we work with so that all of these artworks are documented with conservation, maintenance reports, so that over the next 10, 15, 20 years, the city has all of the materials needed to keep these installations, clean and prepared for the city. So that's like our scope of work. And then I think we are going to really rely on the Arts and Culture Commission and the Library and Arts and Culture team to make sure that we're meeting the goals of the city, and really to give us a lot of feedback on the city the best, and as much time as we spend over the next couple of months really diving into the community fabric of Glendale. We're obviously residents of Los Angeles, but we're going to rely on your expertise and your relationships with community groups and stakeholders in the city to really make sure that the vision and plan that we're trying to put together really speaks to the city. So we're going to hopefully have a lot of these sort of hopefully within a year we're in person, but whether it's Zoom meetings or email exchanges or us sending PDFs of concepts to you, we really welcome the feedback and want to hear from all of you. So I think it's going to be important for the Arts and Culture Commission to sort of stay close with this and help with the feedback. And then really quickly getting into our selection process. And again, what we have in the presentation is just really more detailed, and will continue to become more detailed as we create our strategic plan. But again, it's, our team will manage an RFQ and RFP process. It will really depend by project, by individual installation, how we want to approach it. Some direct commissions. But again, I think the way we generally approach this is we'll present artists that we feel fit for the individual installation, maybe 3 or 4 for each project. We'll make recommendations to the Arts and Culture Committee. Hopefully we can narrow down on, let's just say 2. And then what we love to really do, especially for these larger installations, is then take the 2 artists we feel really good about and ask each of them to create a site-specific concept, which will allow us to actually see what they're envisioning and approve it from there. So there are actually multiple steps. It takes a little longer versus just selecting an artist and kind of letting them go. But if we select the artist we feel good about, let's say installation A, we pick our 2 artists, then we give them another 30 days to give us site-specific concepts. And generally, we like to make sure that artists are compensated even a minimal honorarium to spend the design time to do that. But then we always end up with very clear visuals. And from there, we can often edit or make suggestions, but then it gives us an ability to say, okay, we know exactly what we're getting for the site. So that's sort of the general process we'd like to go through with these, just because the scale and budget on these installations. And again, the next couple of pages are just the sort of criteria we're looking for the artists. But yeah, that's generally our process. Again, this document is something that we will continue to build on, which will probably be a lot longer than this as we start getting into our plan and speaking to community stakeholders. But this is the beginning of what will be our long-term strategic plan, so that to help guide us through all of these installations. So everyone's quiet. That's all I've got for you right now.
No, thank you, Bo. I'm going to actually stop sharing the screen and open it up. We wanted to have some time for commissioners to share their feedback or any questions that they may have for Bo. Chair Zadorian, do you want to take the lead or in regards to calling upon commissioners?
You're muted.
She knows. She's trying to unmute.
I've had the same troubles. I've got the Bluetooth headphones, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't with my laptop.
You see.
I'm getting the go-ahead from Chair Zadorian to go move on. So I think we'll start with Commissioner Yank. That's the order that we originally had. So Commissioner Yank, do you have any questions or comments for Bo?
Well, thank you very much for your presentation. I think one of the things that I really enjoyed hearing about was the process, the thoughtful process that you're planning on embarking upon. I really like the idea of having a strategic art plan that connects all of the different projects together. That there's a central core and there's embedded values, in terms of what you're really looking for. And what we're all looking for this project to do. So I think the only thing that really was coming up for me is just thinking about the geography of Glendale a little bit, and how the values of connecting with communities and making the artwork really relevant to different communities across the city, because it's a city of many, many, many neighborhoods, that spans quite a bit of geography. And so thinking about how to effectively both integrate the projects throughout the city in an impactful way, but also, make them impactful as a group rather than kind of fading into the geography that we have here in the city. So that's just something I was coming up for me, and maybe something to consider as you're working through the strategic plan, just considering the many different geographies and neighborhoods within Glendale, and where it makes sense to site these types of projects.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Yank. I think for us and for me, I think one of the biggest challenges, and I think we're going to have to spend almost some of the most time at the outset of this project, is really determining our artwork locations. And that's where I think we will rely heavily on all of your feedback, whether it's a formal meeting like this or informal conversations. At some point, I'd love to talk to all of you individually. Because again, while we're Los Angeles-based team, you know the city the best. And so I really want to hear from all of you where you think that, these priority neighborhoods are, where the priority locations are. And I think drilling down into those ideal locations, and, while we're targeting 10 installations, if we boil down to 12 or 15 locations and then sort of like weigh the pros, cons, and the values. And so when we've done the full sort of evaluation, when we end up with our 10 final locations, that thought process of how we're impacting those individual neighborhoods, I think will be key. And I think that's sort of part of the process of selecting those locations. Because yes, I'm sure every neighborhood's got its own fabric, its own diversity mix, its own sort of flavor, and we want to make sure that the artwork for each of the locations within those neighborhoods works for that particular sort of micro neighborhood, and also for the city as a whole. So, but thank you. Yeah, no, that we're definitely. And I think with Gary and Jennifer, that's when we've talked about that. For me, that's like picking those locations is going to be really key, and that will drive, I think, everything else from there. So, thank you.
Great. That's all my comments right now. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
We're still having trouble hearing you, Savannah. It says you're unmuted, but I'm not hearing you. I don't know if other folks are.
I'm not hearing Chair Zadorian as well, but I'll move on and invite Commissioner Vyar to provide comments or questions to Bo.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Bo. That was such an interesting and thorough presentation, actually, with the print alongside your verbal presentation. I just really didn't have time to formulate any questions, but I did, just piggybacking on Commissioner Yank's comments and your responses to her. I've been in Glendale just a little less than 8 years, and I'm still trying to figure out and learning about the different neighborhoods. I think I know mine pretty well, but happily, I think we have representation on the commission from some different areas of the city that will be helpful. But I very much appreciate your technique, your methodology. That it sounds like pre-COVID, you actually went out on the street and did, and that's it reminds me of the Tonight shows and the late night shows and the man on the street comments. That's probably going to be a productive way to explore neighborhoods. If in fact you can do that, you can put that into practice soon. I hope within a few months. I hope. But thanks. I may have more questions or have some questions later, but right now it's just, I understand that it's going to be a challenge learning, really absorbing the sense, the feeling of each neighborhood in Glendale. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'll just make a quick comment. Thank you, Commissioner Vyar. In the past, we've done all kinds of creative sort of canvassing, and some of it's even I like to just go and, if we're looking at a neighborhood, I'd like to hit the local coffee shop, just start chatting people up. But usually we'll create like postcards with just sort of general, like, ask people to actually fill out a little information card. We've done creative things like popsicle stands where people like, fill out a postcard, get a popsicle in the summer, right? So like we've actually spent some money to do some really fun, engaging sort of activities where people give us feedback, but also are like, they want to hang out with us because they're getting snacks. So we've done a lot of like in-person fun things in the past, which I don't think we're going to be able to do, but I'm sure we will brainstorm and come up with some creative ways. And, if, worst case situation, we will get some information of community groups and community leaders and stakeholders. And if we're just getting on Zooms and talking to them and getting, letting them know it's not even as much getting them to tell us what they're looking for, but also to let them know that we want them to be part of the process, to let them feel heard, so that when we are showing up with artworks, they know who we are. They felt like they've been, we've talked to them, we've engaged with them. So they feel like part of the process, even a minimal. And so people end up with buy-in. And so they end up being, if you have buy-in, you're going to be proud about what's coming into your neighborhood versus something just showing up on your doorstep. And I think a lot of it is not even so much relying on them to tell us, hey, we want a red sculpture, or we want this. It's really more just like, hey, we've heard you. You have our number. If you have questions, call us, and again, they've been engaged with and they're part of the process, so they have buy-in. And that's really what we look for with a lot of our engagement.
That sounds really strategic and productive. We held a meeting last year for the community at large and broke into groups to tell us to get feedback from the community and what they would like to see in art installation and what steps they thought would be productive toward making Glendale an arts destination. But at my table, it was all artists. And I was I was sort of disappointed because I really wanted to hear from non-artists in the community, people just like me who admire art, but are not actually artisans themselves. And so this sounds like a good trajectory. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner.
It appears as though Chair Zadorian is still having difficulty. So I will invite Commissioner Vidor to provide questions or comments to Bo.
Well, thanks so much, Bo. I agree with my fellow commissioners that you're definitely, your approach is really greatly appreciated, and your willingness, to get out there. Getting out there in Glendale can be a challenge, partially for some of the reasons Commissioner Vier mentioned. And I think it's beholden on us to help us commissioners, to help you roll out the plan by doing a very kind of broad, comprehensive informational campaign, even before you get into tapping individuals and groups, because we do have a pretty engaged artists community here that we can put our fingers on and get information from, but it's going to be extremely important to engage with the leaders and influencers in the neighborhoods, in the business community, and to reach out to all spheres of Glendale who normally do not get involved in policy making and even specific things about the arts. And so, I think maybe we should step back at some point early on in the process and look at a citywide presentation. I mean, you have a great template here, and the dog and pony show idea of not only, what kind of art do you want, but explaining the whole program to people to get the Glendale world excited about this is really going to be important. And starting with the community at large with a public presentation that is publicized to the whole world and advertised in the paper so people can log on and hear basically what you presented to us here is probably going to be a good idea to start with before we start to tap into individual neighborhoods and business communities, because the whole city has to get behind this. Otherwise, it might end up being like pulling teeth to try to get people to engage. And I think once they hear what you have to say, they will be very excited about all of this. And possibly it will even spur some action and amongst building owners and people, landlords, big building owners, big businesses to take it upon themselves to make the city more artistic. Your first slide, your opening slide with your big view of Glendale and the mountains behind it, shows you how, for lack of a better word, kind of bland Glendale is and how there really isn't yet any generalized interest in the arts. And I think your presentation can really help people from all walks in Glendale collectively get some excitement. So that first push could be very, very broad in who you reach, and then start to look at other people because, people that own high rises, maybe they would be willing to do something really creative with a very prominent building. And if they knew about this, they might want to jump on and be helpful. So that's my comment. I probably have a lot of questions, and maybe as we drill, I don't want to go any farther with, taking up meeting time. So, at some point, I think on phase 2, we'll get into more detail. But thank you immensely. Really beautiful.
No, thank you, Commissioner Vidor. I think it's actually a really good idea presenting to the public at large. We've definitely done that in the past. And I think if we do have an opportunity to speak to like a larger public group, whether it's sort of pre-canvassing or post, I think my instinct would go post. So we actually have had some time to sort of get some feedback so we can include that in what we're presenting, and probably more visual than what I'm sharing with you, or maybe, really showing visuals of things we've done in other cities with other developments that have become like landmark and iconic installations that I'm sure people have seen driving around Los Angeles. So people can really get a visual of like, this is what we're working towards. Oftentimes people hear public art and they think about the sort of like bronze ball on the corner of a building that was built in the 70s, right? There's no connection to that, for a community. But when we show them the kind of things we're working on, I think that's a great idea to get people really excited. And again, I think part of our community engagement isn't just to get them to tell us what they want to see, because people often don't know. It's really to get them engaged, understanding what we're working on, so they feel part of the process. Just total aside, and again, I'm just kind of going aside here. We did a project in Beverly Hills, right in the middle of Beverly Hills on Cannon Drive, Cannon and Wilshire, and that was, a very finicky group of stakeholders, both businesses and community, city council, very, very particular. And we spent time talking to almost every business owner up and down Cannon through the whole process, showed them what we were looking at, showed them the artist, got feedback from them and the artist, sat down with them. So then when we presented to city council, we had half a dozen very vocal business leaders on Cannon come to bat for us, all telling the city council how supportive they were, how they were part of the process. And, that really helps streamline things when you've got the most vocal business leaders in your corner. And that's the kind of engagement we want to have. They didn't know what they wanted, but the fact that we included them as part of the process, that's kind of what we want to do with these in Glendale.
Yes, I totally agree with that. And, you know best from your experience what the rollout and the sequence should be. And I think city council, all the, appointed officials and staff in the government also. I think the whole city government needs to be made aware too, because clearly, you mentioned a number of things that are really important to us, that everybody understands that their departments and different people are going to have to work with guidelines and regulations and streamlining processes. And I think getting the city itself excited about this is a good, one of the good first steps that need to be made too.
Thank you.
Thank
That was
you.
good feedback.
I just wanted to check, can everyone hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, you guys can hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great. Then we can go ahead and move on to Commissioner Tufenkamp, or Vice Chair Tufenkamp.
Hi, good morning, and thank you both for your very in-depth presentation. I am so excited about this whole thing. I think Glendale is at a very, very exciting time in the arts, and I remember in early 90s, I was on a commission or on a team with Sheldon Baker, and he started the art strategy, looking at arts in Glendale. And we have come a very long time, and I feel like everything's coming together now. So a very, very exciting time. Thank you. And I really appreciate that the whole presentation, and that you're so concerned about integrating the work into the fabric of Glendale and picking up on the voice of Glendale. And I think that's going to be very important. And I feel that the brainstorming portion of this whole thing, and the getting the community excited and the community kind of signed on and engaged in this whole process is going to be very important. And we, the commission, are here and willing and available to guide you and help you in anything that you would need. So please, reach out to us. And I think we will have many, many questions as we go ahead. And I definitely agree with Commissioner Vidor that the city council and city government really needs to be kind of made aware of everything, and really signed on to the whole project as every step of the way. So they would be excited about the whole process as well. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, well, that leaves me. So everything looks good to me. This is a really good foundation. I'm very much looking forward to seeing the detailed strategy. I don't want to take up too much time, but I do think the one-on-ones with each commissioner is a great idea, just so we kind of build that relationship with each other and can go into much more detail about what we specifically want. I know we've gone through that in multiple commission meetings and kind of shared that with you, but I think one-on-one meetings would be the best moving forward. Everything else looks great to me, and I have no questions for you as of yet. So we can go ahead and move forward.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, definitely look forward to talking with all of you individually. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bo, do you want to, before you leave, introduce Nikki, who's on the line?
I think I did at the beginning, but yeah, Nikki Dixon is on with us as well. Nikki is I will be the sort of primary on everything with Glendale moving forward, but Nikki will be heavily involved, and you'll see her on CC with everything, because she'll be working closely with artists once we start selecting people, helping me put together the RFPs and the strategic plan. And then other people from my team who you probably won't ever see until we get into fabrication stages. Well, we curate fairly collaboratively on our end. So, different people from my team get involved at different stages, but Nikki will be sort of my right hand on everything we're doing with Glendale.
Thank you, Bo. Director Schaefer, before Bo leaves, any last words or comments?
No, Director Schaefer, Library Arts and Culture, just thank you so much, Bo. We feel, very fortunate to be working with you on this. We feel like you have our best interests at heart and the best interests of the city of Glendale and the residents. So we're very excited to embark on this process and really change the face of Glendale and truly see the vision of the arts master plan and Glendale transformed into an arts destination. And you're the right person to help us with this and make this happen. So we're really excited to work with you as well as your teammates.
Thank you. We hope we're the right team, and we look forward.
You're the right team.
Showing that off over the next couple of years. And really, I think setting the foundation for the future of Glendale's arts and culture programming. So very excited. Thank you all for having us.
Thank you, Bo. I completely co-sign. It's been so easy and wonderful to work with you thus far, so we know that you're the right team. But thank you for everything, and thank you, Nikki, as well. And you're welcome to exit the meeting right now. You don't have to stay for the entire thing.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. I look forward to talking to you soon.
Okay, just wanted to confirm that.
Does that mean we're moving into the work plan discussion?
Correct.
Before we start, Jennifer, do you want to kind of run through how the formatting will be? Are we just going to go through the same way in that order? And each commissioner, is there specific topics we want to go through as per the neighborhood arts, citywide arts? Is that how we will be going forward?
Sure. So I'll move on to the next agenda item at this point. So agenda item 3A, 2021-2022 Arts and Culture Commission Work Plan discussion. I sent all of the commissioners a PowerPoint presentation, which we're going to go through throughout the next discussion item. But what we wanted to do is remain within the umbrella themes that we've had for the urban art program plan. So that's citywide arts, neighborhood arts, performing arts, and arts and cultural events, and provide a proposed estimated budget for each of these, which would be the 2021-2022 budget, which I'll pull up now. But Director Schaefer, is there anything else you'd like to include before I jump in?
Yes, thank you. Gary Schaefer, Library Arts and Culture. Obviously, the main goal of this entire body, meaning city and commission, is to work through our arts and culture plan for the next fiscal year. So starting July 1 and running through June 30. Pardon me, 2022. Please understand that behind those scenes, Jennifer and I have kind of another goal, which is we have to prepare a budget so that we can get that submitted for approval to City Council. So while this is all going on, our main goal is really to kind of ascertain, which Jennifer's done a woman's job of putting together this, proposed budget. Everything is up for discussion, but, obviously we still in the spirit of the art plan, are working within the buckets we've been working in. Those do seem to work well. And that's how we've kind of broken out the budget. We can move dollars, we can look at things, but at the end of the day, our goal, so that we can stay in alignment with the city budget, which the city is starting the budget process next week, is to get that budget outlined for this group, and then it will be basically presented at the next commission meeting, more as just to officially recommend that. So that is the goal today, and that's what we'll kind of always be working towards. So just if we seem to be a little very focused on dollars, that's why. So thank you. And Jennifer, I'll turn it back over to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Director Schaefer. So my goal is to go through the presentation, and then at each section, citywide arts, neighborhood arts, performing arts, cultural events, I will stop sharing so that we can have a conversation first amongst the commissioners, and then I'll go back to sharing the budget line items. So I'll just start ahead. And as Director Schaefer mentioned, this is a framework. We can absolutely discuss expanding or decreasing certain amounts, but we wanted to provide you with a framework to start off with, just so that you have an idea of where staff is envisioning the budget looking like for this next year. So this first slide is the overall budget for 2021-2022, which would be the fiscal year, July 2021 to June 2022. And we're going to go through each, as I mentioned, section first. So first up would be citywide arts. And I will leave this slide up for a little bit and then I'll stop sharing, but I'll go through them briefly. We had earmarked Art Happens Anywhere. We originally was a response to COVID-19 last year, but I know that the commissioners were interested in continuing to pursue this for the new year. So we have earmarked $100,000 for this program. We have also earmarked $100,000 for the culturally specific calls for artists, which would be 5 calls a year, $20,000 each. So this, for example, would be the Black History Month call for artists, Armenian Genocide Remembrance Month, these types of calls for artists. Iconic public artworks, which is what Labas and Bobas just presented on. We are earmarking $900,000, and this is not necessarily the full amount for the 10 projects, but it would be about half to 6 out of the 10 projects that would be established. We are also earmarking an administrative fee for Labas projects and other consultant work as well for $100,000. And we're also wanted to hold a 10% contingency so that there is some wiggle room for any other unforeseen things that may come up. So I'm going to stop sharing at this point, and Chair Zadorian, I will hand it back over to you to coordinate the commission comments.
Okay. I guess we can just start down the list, and then we can go back a second round if there were any extra or additional comments, and have discussion back and forth amongst each other. So first, let's go ahead and start with Commissioner Yang, if you had any comments or questions about citywide arts specifically. You're still muted if you, yeah.
Sorry. I don't think I have anything quite at this point. It might be helpful to look in a little more detail because I haven't been through this process before, so I'm not quite sure what to comment on right now.
Okay, no problem. We can go through the list, and if you have any that pop up, we can come back to you. Okay. And I believe next is Commissioner Viar.
Jennifer, what did you say the 900,000 for the iconic works? That was, you said that's not to cover all 10 of the Labas projects, right? What did you say it was for? 6?
Correct. It would be about 5 to 6 of the projects.
5 to 6. Okay, that's all I was wondering. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Vidor.
Yeah, I'm a little. Thank you very much, Jennifer. I'm a little. I don't know. I feel like I don't have quite enough information. I don't understand where these numbers derive from. We used to work to a 2-year plan. We did have a 2-year work plan previously. And when I think of budget, I think of, looking at it very spreadsheet wise. Like, for instance, one question that pops up for me is we've just worked to a budget and now we're coming up with a new budget. What did we, how did we do on the last budget? Do we have money left over? If so, is that included in this budget? How much is carrying over? How were these numbers determined? For instance, when I see $900,000 and 6 iconic pieces of art, I'm thinking that seems somewhat like it could be somewhat low. And, what was the basis for that determination of how much these works of art are going to cost? So for me, these numbers look a little bit magical, and I'm not really sure if I have enough information to say they're okay or not. And the thing about we're talking about 1 fiscal year here versus 2. Is this part of a larger 2-year plan? And if so, just what is the basis basis for the money, and what actually is the LaBasse price tag when you say wiggle room on things? Is that for their consulting fee over the next 3 years, or is it something else that we're thinking might vary in price? It's very hard to really make a decision about whether this budget is accurate or not without comparators or more details as to how the numbers were derived.
So, Chair Zadorian, if I could address. So, Jennifer, if you could put the slide back up, please. So it's Commissioner Vidor and fellow commissioners, it's really our job to manage the budget part of it. So the art fund obviously has more than this amount of money in it, but it is the art fund we have for the next several years. City plans its budget on an annual basis, so that's why we're looking at this annually. Monies stay within the art fund if they're not spent, so they don't revert anywhere else. They have to stay in the art fund. So projects that we have already the budget we worked on most recently was actually for the remainder of this fiscal year. You're correct, Commissioner Vidor, that we had done a 2-year budget that was outside of the normal city budget cycle, and it created lots of complications for us. There are 6 months left in the fiscal year, and so what we're trying to do in this is to align with the city's normal budgeting process, because that's the project process in which we have to work. So the last numbers we were talking about are for the remaining 6 months of this fiscal year, actually at this point, 5 months of this fiscal year. And so those were those numbers. So those dollars stay with us, and those dollars, so projects that you've already approved, that we've already budgeted for, those are set aside for those projects. These, for instance, with the culturally specific calls for artists, the $100,000, those would be for new projects. So I think it might be helpful for you all to, certainly I appreciate you keeping the budget in mind. This is a budget, but to think about, like, what do you want to accomplish over the next year? And then let us, calculate the dollars that we estimate that will take. So for instance, the iconic public artworks, we estimate over the 3 years that will actually be, could be as high as $3 million spent. But all of the work is not going to be happening in this next fiscal year. We estimate $900,000 will be the amount that's needed in this fiscal year. We can always go back within the city's budgeting process if for some reason it needs to be $1 million on a quarterly basis. We can request the dollars be added to that. But really what we're trying to do is, this is the estimate. As far as the amount for LaBasse projects, that is based on the timeline that they have proposed of when their payments would be made to them. So that's that amount, and any other, the Coro Fellow that we've talked to about murals or any other intern would actually come from that money as well. It doesn't flow through LaBasse. So we've just kind of put those admin dollars there. Because we're talking about larger amounts than we normally talk about, $900,000. I don't know that we've spent $900,000 in a fiscal year ever, not at least since I've been here, but that is why we're doing this LaBasse project and working through with them on this. That's why we want this contingency here in case there's just kind of those unforeseen costs. So it's really, we're looking at these 4 individual buckets. So it's kind of like, as you look at citywide arts and things that we do in citywide arts, what do you want to accomplish for the next year? And then let us, put those budget numbers there. Now the budgets remain in technically one bucket, like we're not assigning these dollars from an accounting standpoint into each of these. So we can move dollars around, but we do need to have a budget that we can work with. And so this is the overall budget, and these are the things that we envision happening. Now, as has happened with every year, we'll have things, opportunities, if you will, pop up. And I think this budget is built in such a way with the contingency that we can allow for that. But at this point, to align with the city process, we need to get a budget put together. And this is what we're planning on for the next year. And then as we make our plans of what we want to accomplish, whether that's over the next 2 years, 3 years, we will keep all those things in mind. So hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, that was very helpful. Thank you. And it just, my question obviously is drilling down into detail that we don't have to get into now. I guess it's just my somewhat, maybe a little bit geeky desire to understand, the whole accounting process in terms of what we've done, what we've accomplished, how much money we've spent carrying forward, and then the add-ons in the next budget cycle. So that's another discussion. And now that you've explained what I'm looking at here, I don't have any more questions, and I appreciate your explanation. Thank you.
Okay,
My pleasure.
Thank you. We can go ahead and move forward to Vice Chair Tufenkian.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you, Gary, for the explanation. My only, I guess, question would be for the iconic public artworks, 900,000. So that could be anywhere up to 6 pieces, right? What if that's only 2 or 3 pieces? That would be okay, or is it? Do we definitely need to make that be 5 or 6 pieces, as she mentioned?
So this, this is what we're anticipating the spending to be, and that's every city manager is going through the same process right now of what are we anticipating to spend. So we think that this will keep it again based on our initial plans. We are looking at up to $3 million going for these 10 iconic projects. It may be less than that, but the 900,000 should get us through what we initially want. But we can go in if we find that we'll be at 7 projects, or the 5 or 6 projects are going to be more. We can go through the normal budget process and request to move more monies into there. It's just, this is our best ballpark of what we think will be spent in the next fiscal year. And it probably might be a little less than this, but that just gives you an idea of what we're kind of planning for all the iconic art projects in total.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I had 2 questions. For the AHA program, I'm assuming this is just an extension of what's already been approved. We won't be having an extra call. This is just everything that was from last year moving into this current year. Is that correct?
Excellent question. And sorry, Jennifer, she was probably about to jump in. So no, those things are already, that money is set aside for anything that we did approve. I think we might have, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, we may have had a project that we decided not to fund, or we might fund in the future. So those would come from these dollars if that was the case. But for anything that we approve, that we put dollars to, those dollars are there for that project. So this could be another continuation of AHA. If you guys wanted to conceive, you all wanted to conceive of a kind of different arts program that would be a call for artists, we could do that as well. This would just be money set aside for an AHA type call.
Okay.
And
then my second question was, so when I looked at the different sectors, I guess we'll call it the citywide art and neighborhood arts and whatnot, where will the mural art program fall? Because I saw the utility box program, but I am not seeing anything about the wall mural. I thought we would have that budgeted in for this coming year and part of our work progress.
Jennifer, do you want to address that?
You can, Director Schaefer. I was multitasking with GTV6, so go ahead.
Oh, no worries. So excellent question, because I don't know that we necessarily included that, and that would be a great thing for us to add into this budget. So we did not foresee everything. So if that's something which I assume you would like to get going within the next year, I'm fairly confident you do, that we have 2 murals right now. So that would be something we might want to add, and we can. We have the budget sits at about $8 million right now, so we can add more money to this budget, and we can include the murals as well. What bucket that falls into, I leave to Jennifer, whether it's in citywide art or neighborhood arts. In a sense, it really seems like neighborhood arts to me. But we could put a line item in there for murals.
Yes, let's definitely go ahead and do that, because I think that's one of the big projects that we want to go ahead. We've been waiting for it to get passed with City Council, and so we want to move forward. You said the budget is $8 million. Is that after last year's spending? Is that just what's been accumulating and what we currently have right now sitting?
That would be what's sitting right now. After the spending that we've had, it's a slight approximate number, but it's within 100,000 of that amount.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Then I have no further questions. Just please go ahead and add in the wall mural art program into our work plan, and then we can go ahead and do another round. If someone has a question, just go ahead and raise your hand, because some people may not. Yes, Commissioner Yank.
Okay, so now I have a few things to say now that I understand. I think with regards to the mural program, I believe a while ago we had talked about there also being dollars for like the research and process around building out that program. So I'm sure that's what you're referring to, but I just wanted to clarify that that would be also included in the budget, because that seems, rather than just diving in, that we're really, putting thought and research into a process around that.
So the research is ongoing now with, we have a fellow through an internship program, but she is, has her master's degree in public administration. She's doing a deep dive into various city ordinances from West Hollywood to Los Angeles and looking at that. And we'll come back to, she's actually presenting at our next meeting. So that's the initial stage. So we could use money in the administrative fund, that's not all for LABASS, to hire someone to do some additional work for us. But I think what, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chair Zadorian is referring to is really we should put, $50,000, $100,000 aside for actual murals to be, applied, if you will. So I think 75 to 100,000 would probably hopefully be sufficient. And I apologize, today is blowing day, mowing and blowing day at my house. So if you hear any background noise, that's coming from me.
Okay, and I just had one more comment. I think that I'm not sure where this fits into the budget. I think it might be a portion of the admin, but I would really like to propose that we consider as a commission or with the Department of Library, Arts and Culture to build out kind of a separate cultural equity and inclusion plan, along with that would be aligned with the strategic plan that I know you already have at the Department of Library, Arts and Culture. And I spent some time with that this week, but just thinking about our questions that came up at the last meeting around language in our culturally specific calls, some of the reactions to some of those calls in the past. I think it would just really be of our benefit, and we've talked about it a couple of times more vaguely, just we should reach out to stakeholders. We should talk to, have some groups, some focus groups. And I think I would be really interested in formalizing that into some kind of process that would result in a cultural equity and inclusion plan, and some set of core values for us, both as the department and as the commission. It's something that other organizations have been asked to do by LA County in their granting processes. And I just think it would be a beneficial process for us and would kind of formalize this idea of reaching out to stakeholders and clarifying some of our language around these culturally specific calls. So there is a group, there's groups that do this. Aspire Group is one that has been working with the county very closely, the County Arts Commission or Arts Department. So I just wanted to put that on the table as something I would be very interested in having the commission consider embarking on this year.
Based on, I worry about taking on new projects, but that is completely aligned with the strategic plan of the library. It's so important at this time that I would agree with you that that should be something that we find a way to make happen. In your experience, because you've worked in this space for a long time, how much do you think would be a reasonable amount of money to at least budget for that we would probably include kind of in the administration part of it, though I might want to call that out as a particular line item just to, demonstrate that this is something that we, are definitely planning to do and that we understand the importance of it.
I've only really worked with very small organizations with small groups of stakeholders, not on a citywide level. So I'm not sure I'm the best person to speak to that, but I would imagine that maybe something like $20,000 or $10,000, to have a consultant group and then be able to conduct like a variety of interviews. I mean, I'm very aware of your guys' capacity as well, and it would be a big project. So I think if we were going to even make a start on it this year, then it would probably be important to bring on some kind of consultant group that could work with us to do that outreach and conduct some of those interviews.
So what I would suggest is allow us, we're not adopting or recommending the budget today as a body. That will happen in our next commission meeting. So let us do a little bit of research on that. And then when we present at the meeting later this month, we'll have a ballpark number that we think will cover that cost. But I just, this is perfect example of something that we need to look at, both the mural program, mural dollars, the cultural equity plan. And so those would be things I would say, yes, we are but we are a mighty body. And those are important things that we need to include in this budget for next year. So thank you.
Director Schaefer, if I may, thank you, Commissioner Yank, for that recommendation. I think that's imperative and incredibly important as we move the work. I have relationships with the Department of Arts and Culture, with the county, and I can reach out to them. I've also worked with the Aspire group before and can reach out to them and other groups as well. So I can definitely make sure to have that as an adjustment to the budget line when we review it at the next meeting for February 18th. I think that all of these things are incredibly important. But I think one thing that I would need guidance with as staff is to prioritize what we definitely want to make sure we get done in the next year. Because the more we add, the more difficult, I don't want to say difficult, the harder it is to manage several projects. So I think help with prioritizing what we absolutely want to make sure we get done would be helpful to me as I push the work forward.
Okay, we can go ahead and move forward to Commissioner Vidor.
Thanks. Great suggestion, Commissioner Yank. A couple questions. One is about the mural again, just to circle back on that. Obviously, in various programs like AHA, specific calls, iconic public art, anywhere where there's a visual art component, we would have the possibility of murals. So I just want to make sure I understand. Maybe you said this and I just missed it, but what the specific mural line item, which is always good to have to make it very visible in our budgetary plan, but what that includes, because all of the individual visual arts initiatives that are budgeted here could potentially include murals as well. So could you just reiterate what the mural budget line item includes?
So I will answer your question. Thank you. But I might do it in a roundabout way. So I just am keeping in mind what Jennifer just shared with us. And so certainly if we want to look at this cultural equity thing, we may want to take a pause on some of the cultural calls for artists. Perhaps we do this work first, and then we do cultural calls for artists after we've done the deep dive into cultural equity plan. In terms of AHA, maybe we put a pause on that because we definitely want to work on murals, or we just put money into AHA and we try to write in more of a call for murals there. So it just, what are our priorities? What would you like to be sitting at July 1, 2022, having accomplished? Certainly, we're going to be accomplishing a lot with Beau Labas. So that part, takes care of itself, but that is going to be a lot of work on everyone's part on this call, because there's going to be lots of engagement with commissioners and all of that. So we're going to be accomplishing a lot there. And we still haven't gotten to, we have events that we're hopeful the pandemic somewhat subsides and we can do some of our events. And so we have a lot of other things going on. I just know in talking with Chair Zadorian that the murals are very important to her. I know they're important to you, Commissioner Fedora, probably everyone on this call. So I think calling that out, certainly we have to get through. We just recently took over murals for the city as a group. We still need to get through, a better ordinance. So there's still things that have to happen. We still have 2 murals waiting in the wings right now that we're waiting for the process to come together so that we can get those going. So what do we want to accomplish? But I just know that that's important to do. And we may want to do a call for specifically for murals. As I was envisioning that before, I had to chuckle a bit, but I was on mute, thankfully, when Beau said, well, murals don't have very much regulation, or something like that. And I'm like, oh my goodness, yes, they do, at least here in Glendale. So I want to be respectful in what can really be accomplished. But just a particular idea would be putting a program together once we have an ordinance solidified that does a call for artists and businesses who want to have a mural on their business and do some sort of matchmaking with murals. So that a business volunteers to have a mural painted and there is an artist who responds. And we do that in, say, the downtown area or something like that. But that's a very complex project. It sounds easy, but that's fairly complex. And I think we're going to get more information with the Coro fellow who's going to be presenting to us at the next meeting of what she would recommend based on what other cities are doing in her research. So it may be that we need to, we can certainly just keep money in AHA and include mural calls within that. But I just know it's important to many of you. I'm concerned we're taking on too much. And we can also direct Labas to say we want at least 2 to 3 murals within that program. So that's another way that we can accomplish, and those would be probably, obviously we want the best of the best, but those would be leading artists. This would be a significant commission. So that may be a way we accomplish murals as well within the next year. So I probably was a very good politician answer to your question. I may not have answered anything, but hopefully it was of some help. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have to defer to the chair. She's running the meeting.
Can I comment back?
Apparently, yes.
Oh,
please.
Okay. Well, thank you. That helped a little bit. As far as the murals are going, I think it is a great idea to put the word mural into the LaBasse iconic art plan in some form. That's one thing. There should be an iconic mural as well as iconic other types of art. And to the point of, and then maybe murals will follow through in the other programs we have. The Coro development of the administrative requirements is really important for us to get out of the way before we dive headfirst into a mural program. And to the point of inclusion and equity, I didn't look at it real closely, but LaBasse must have a great amount of experience with it. And could we kind of roll that out? I mean, I'm just assuming here, although we didn't talk about it, do they have a detailed have they done a detailed study of that, and do they have that embedded in their program? And is that something that we could kind of piggyback off of and use theirs as a starting point for us? Because that's our biggest, most visible program. And, maybe there's already something there that we can utilize in addition to finding our own footing with that, with a consultant. So that's a question. Maybe it's a question for, I'm not sure who, but, what's LaBasse's experience, and, can we leverage it?
So Gary Schaefer, Library Arts and Culture. So LaBasse is certainly going to, he even mentioned that, they would definitely include, that. And we have stressed that, I know it's important to all of you. It's important to me as well that we make sure we have predominance of female artists, that we have a predominance of underrepresented minorities, and quite frankly, people who, artists who reflect Glendale. But I think what Commissioner Yank, and please correct me if I'm wrong, was alluding to is really some sort of, study, like how do we make sure that we are equitable as we move forward in doing like a separate study. So I think LaBasse is definitely in their works. We'll be including that component. But I think, we want to kind of, we have the funds, and we will be spending lots of money over the next, several years. And I think it is, very important that we take this, dive and looking at cultural equity, diversity, inclusion, and even anti-racism. And so I think that would be money well spent to look at some sort of equity plan separate from, the LaBasse projects, which I think will be representative, most definitely. But this would touch on to make sure we're doing our due diligence across the board whenever we do calls, whenever we're engaging in the arts. And please correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner Yank.
Yeah, I just want to add a little bit of additional detail, which I think that what my understanding of a cultural equity and inclusion plan is not sort of a deep look at the city's history of where we've been, where we've made progress, and then where we would like to go, and a really good kind of reckoning, of where we are as a commission, as a department, in terms of what we've done and where we're going, and then to get really specific, because we make a lot of assumptions about what we think diversity and cultural inclusion are, but I guarantee that means a different thing to each one of us. And so it's about really, and not only each one of us, but also the communities that we serve. And so really like digging into the details, what are we talking about? Are we talking about racial and ethnic diversity? Are we talking about diversity of access, language justice? Like there's many, many, many aspects. And not that a city has to focus on all of those things, but for a set period of time, let's say over the next 2 or 3 years, what are going to be our primary focus in terms of increasing diversity? What are the strategies that we can employ in order to get that done? And then how do we measure the outcomes of how successful we were? So it's really about holding us accountable. It's more like a strategic plan, but very much focused on these issues of equity and inclusion. And it can be right-sized to whatever our capacity is, and whatever we deem the highest priorities are. But I think that kind of like focus will be really useful, and it will be useful for LaBasse too, as they move forward, to have like a clear picture of like, hey, these are our diversity priorities as a commission and as a department within the arts within the city. So I think if we can all get clear on that, that helps them also align very specifically, because they might have a different idea of what diversity means too. So that's just my kind of spiel about the importance of CEI plans.
If I can quickly comment, first of all, thank you, Commissioner Yank. I really do appreciate your voice in the room and sharing those thoughts on the Cultural Equity and Inclusion Plan, and I 110% agree with you. I did like and appreciate Director Schaefer's recommendation in regards to focusing because this is such an important topic, utilizing the space that we held for culturally specific calls for artists, and rather instead focusing that on a cultural equity and inclusion plan, because I think you're right in the sense that it would set the tone for the work with LaBasse, set the tone for our calls, and I think is actually a great recommendation, Director Schaefer, but I 100% agree with you.
Commissioner Vidor, you did have the floor, so. If you had more if you wanted to comment on that.
No, I agree with Commissioner Yank. And I wasn't saying, oh, we don't need to do this, we should just defer to LaBasse. That was not really, that was,
no, and I don't think anyone thought.
I hope nobody thought that. I just thought, I'm hoping and assuming that they've already dealt with this and done a deep dive, considering the business they're in, and that we will hear about that from them, and we need to understand what it is they're doing. But I totally agree with Commissioner Yank, and we have to move forward. And I assume after our resolution that was made last September, that we're moving forward with a citywide strategic plan too, which we haven't heard about yet, but that this is going to affect arts and culture and every other department in the city as well. So thank you for your comments, Commissioner Yank.
Well, and if I could quickly respond, the city actually did set, they are doing an RFP. I don't know where they are exactly in the process for kind of that, I forget the exact term. I know it's historical
context
statement. Yeah, so they're working on that, but I would like us to look at something specific to the arts in addition to that. And then Commissioner Yank also mentioned, she used the word reckoning. And so I, as a marketer, can just not resist plugging that there is a new exhibition from Reflect Space called Reckoning, Racism and Resistance in Glendale. That is reflectspace.org/reckoning. You can check out, there will be a new episode each week for the next 6 weeks. And one just was mounted, I believe, yesterday or the day before. So please do check that out. The Library Arts and Culture this evening is also doing a program. We have scholar And author Richard Rothstein from UC Berkeley will be in discussion tonight with the Deputy Director, I believe, of the California African American Museum at 6:30 this evening. You can find that on the Be the Change website at the library, and they will be discussing his book, The Color of Law, and how our federal government in the past played a major role in racism through redlining and other things like that. So it promises to be a very interesting, thoughtful talk. I do think we should consider for this next year, this is important work, focusing on this cultural equity plan and take a pause on doing the cultural calls for artists. Let's get it correct. Let's defer to some experts to tell us what is the most appropriate way to engage with those communities. That doesn't stop us from doing what we're doing now. We have some calls coming up. We would continue with those because this is going to take a little bit of time. But I would recommend this next year that we focus on that as opposed to doing specific cultural calls for artists. That would be my recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Do we have any other comments from other commissioners?
Thank you,
Would you go
Commissioner
ahead?
Yank, and thank you, Gary, for your input. I also think that this is really, really important because it's going to set the tone for everything that we do, and we wouldn't want important things such as iconic projects to go ahead without having our base set up ahead of time. So this is a step one to set the tone of what we want to do, so what we want to see. So I think it's very important. Thank you.
Okay, Jennifer, I think we can go ahead and move forward.
Okay, I'm going to pull this up. Sorry, bear with me. Okay, so I will move on to neighborhood arts. For this fiscal year, we have the Adams Square Mini Park gas station exhibits, approximately 7 exhibits per year. Those artists are paid $1,000. So that'd be $7,000. From the Beyond the Box utility box mural art program would happen once a year, once a cycle for $30,000. This, we could also, per Chair Zadorian's recommendation, insert the mural program in this section, but would love to invite commissioners' feedback on this proposal for the budget.
Okay. So neighborhood arts, we can go ahead and get started. Commissioner Yank, did you have any comments or questions?
I guess my only comment is for the Adams Square Mini Park. Artists are paid $1,000. I wonder, are any of their other costs underwritten in terms of like production, installation costs, that sort of thing? It seems low for putting up an exhibition.
Sure. Yeah, that's a Commissioner. That's a fantastic question. That is an all-inclusive fee, production and artist stipend included. So if this is an opportunity where the commission decides they would like to increase the artist's fee or the fee that they receive, this would be a great moment to do so.
Might I address Chair Zadorian? I just would want to ask Jennifer a question. As far as the calls go, are we? Do you feel we have a plethora of calls? Like, are we getting adequate calls for this? Do we think that increasing it would generate more calls? Economics would say yes. And then another thought, if Commissioner Yank might consider, is, some of the exhibits are just beautiful and amazing. Some, are interesting. So another idea could also be, at the end of the year, you could set kind of an almost like, as you look back at the last year, what was the most thought-provoking, most eye-catching exhibition, and award some sort of prize, if you will, an additional amount of money after the fact. But I just throw that out there as a potential way to reward artists as well. So it's could be increased fee, it could be that they're paid, or it could be some sort of prize, just as a potential way to reward artists and get more artists interested in participating in it.
Yeah, my sense is also that there's 7 could potentially also be like a lot of exhibitions each year. So, I'm just trying to balance in terms of capacity, but also what's reasonable for compensating an artist. I mean, I would say 1,000 should be just their fee, and then on top of that, additional budget for supplies and installation. So more like 2,000 or 2,500 per exhibition, and maybe the number of exhibitions also potentially could go down by a couple. So it's like 5 a year at 2,500 per. Seems like it might be a little bit more reasonable. You might also get more people interested in that kind of setup. So that's just my thought.
Well, we appreciate you keeping the capacity in mind. Thank you.
Commissioner Yank, I appreciate your comments, and I agree. I think that I'm eager to hear when it's Commissioner Vidor's comments in regards to the community of Adams Hill and their response to these exhibits. When I first started, we were doing exhibits, rotating exhibits every month, which was difficult. And then we decided to expand it to every 6 weeks. So right now, the current exhibits are about 6 weeks long, but I'm happy to discuss, like you've recommended, having a shorter amount of exhibits with a longer tenure, and in potentially increasing the artist fee. But thank you for those recommendations.
Okay. Commissioner Vire?
I don't have any comments about that, except I would support that. Probably reducing the number and increasing the length of the exhibit. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Vidor?
I agree with some of Commissioner Yank's comments. Previously, this is quite when the program first started. First of all, it was terrible because we weren't compensating the artists. So we've come a long way in giving them a stipend. But we also had the pieces up for much longer. I think it was 4 per year. So every artist got a quarter. That may be a little too long. So 5 certainly would be fine. I think we should up the ante to get to have less exhibits that go for a longer time and raise the quality consistently, because as I think Gary Schaefer said, it's often a mixed bag, and we need to attract the highest quality artists. So we need to find a new fee and raise that, and go down to maybe every 2 months changing it. I think the public then gets, we usually have a reception, which we can't do now. I hope we can get back to that this year, so that we attract a big crowd and get a lot of publicity that way. But it takes the community quite a while to get down there and see it. So 2 months would be fine. But I think another issue we have that is going to affect that type of a plan is that the gas station itself is now an established arts venue in the city. I think it's one of the few, maybe only, few neighborhood specific arts venues. And it is constantly leaking It is constantly being repaired. And somewhere, and the Adams Hill Neighborhood Association did actually look into getting a grant somehow to get money to have it fixed, and that has not been successful so far. But we need to work with the Parks Department to make that into a Class A arts-ready place, because I think that is going to be the way that we can attract the best. In addition to increasing the fees and having a longer exhibit time, we need to address the gas station maintenance. You know, it's an arts venue and a designated historic landmark. So I know that's not in our purview, so we somehow need to work with the Parks Department.
And so as a city-owned venue that has not only been reported to the Parks Department, but also to the Public Works Department, which is the one that's responsible for that. So hopefully that will be addressed very, very soon. In terms of, I would like to echo something if the commission would consider that Commissioner Yank said, which is, you know, stipulating that the artist fee is $1,000, but that the supplies can be up to a certain amount, so that the artist is, you know, compensated for the sharing their art with us, absolutely, but that they're not penalized for, you know, the supplies that they need. So I think we just should consider setting a ceiling for the supplies. We can't have artists, you know, proposing something that's, you know, $10,000, $9,000 in supplies. So I think you had mentioned maybe 1,000 to 1,500, Commissioner Yank.
Yeah, and I'm thinking that cover, you know, a good amount of supplies and maybe a little extra if they needed to hire somebody to help them install or something.
Okay.
Have an ambitious project, then they'd have a little bit of wiggle room there too. And that would be a ceiling. I like that idea. Every project's going to be a little different, but yeah, that could be a cap. And then, you know, depending on the project, they would use what they needed out of that bucket.
Okay, thank you.
And I just, you know, I don't want to be misunderstood. I'd just like to give a shout out to the Parks Department, because I have to say the presence of that arts venue has created a lot of community engagement in the appearance of the park, the care that the park gets, the landscaping. And that park has really developed over time into something very special for the surrounding community. So, you know, it's a team effort, and the Parks Department has been really attentive, specifically to the park and to the facility. It's just that, you know, it's an old building, obviously a historic building, and it just needs a little more TLC, I think, to attract the best of the best artists. Thanks.
I know they appreciate that recognition. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Tufenkian.
I think we covered everything, but I agree that personally, arts are vital to, and I think the art has become such an interesting place for. And I think people look forward to new exhibits coming up. So I wouldn't want it to be too long. And I agree with Commissioner Dorr that 4 was too few. Might have been too long of a time, but maybe every 2 months it would allow for up the show and breaking down the show. So maybe 2 months rotation would be good. So 6 a year. And I do agree that $1,000 is way too low. And if $1,000 goes to the artist, maybe, I don't know, $1,000 for whatever they need in addition. That would, I think that would help. Thank you, and thanks for all the great recommendations.
Thank you. I do have 2 recommendations. The first would be in regards to the Adams Hill Mini Park gas station. I would be completely on board with upping the budget for each artist and the stipend. However, doing it in a way where it's kind of broad, so it's either 1,000 to 5,000, and it depends on the art piece, so that we're attracting kind of a higher quality and whatnot, and they can actually explain to us what it is that the money will be going towards, kind of like we've done for AHA, give them a little bit of a room to wiggle, and they can tell us, you know, this is worth this much, and this is what we're going to use it for, and that way we can get even more, and that way it's not that we're paying every single person the same amount. Sometimes it's depending on the art, the quality, what it looks like. And my second would be, and I know we've discussed this in the past, finding a different location, because we love Adams Square Mini Park, and I think we need that across the city. That's not going to be simple. It's not going to be easy. However, having a Coro fellow, we can, you know, have them look for another location. You know, there is Arts Off Promenade. There are other locations in Montrose Park, in North Glendale, by GCC. We need different locations, and if the problem is we don't have enough people applying as artists, we can actually have it where one is at Adams Square and we switch around the city, so people from all over the city can come and view these pieces of art. Maybe some people within each neighborhood are the only ones coming to see it. Maybe some people are the only ones that know and will come to see. So I think having different locations, I mean, we're talking about making Glendale an art hub, but we have only one public kind of space where we're displaying art. So I think the most important thing would be creating these spaces. Most of our problems with AHA has been, okay, well, it's COVID, okay, it's, you know, rain and wear and tear, so we need something that's indoors but safe enough where you can see from the outside. There's some sort of a window display. So if we can do that either through the Coro Fellow helping us or Labas, because they would be doing this research either way, and so maybe we can have them look for different places, locations. I think that would be very inspiring for more artists to get involved in Glendale. You know, when there's only one location that we're displaying things for the public currently, I mean, it doesn't give a lot of options. It doesn't bring in too many artists because there's a limited space and time. And I don't know if everybody else would agree with that. So we can go ahead and come back around, but that was my only comment. Also, there's a raise hand feature if you guys didn't want to, like, just raise your hand on here. It would be simple, or just raise your hand. But if you guys just want to go ahead, it's fine. Vice Chair Tefankian, I saw you.
Chair Zadorian, great suggestion. And we have the space on Artsakh, right? I mean, that's a city. Nothing's really happening.
I just know it's under construction, or will be under construction.
Will.
So it may be just me, but Caroline, Commissioner Tefankian, your audio is cutting out like every other syllable, or not every other, it's about every 3 syllables. So I'm not catching everything you're saying, but maybe that's only me and others aren't experiencing it.
I think she was asking if the space on Artsakh Promenade is available. And I did reply that I believe it's going to be under construction, but I did have the same question as Vice Chair Tefankian. Is that space available? What's going to be happening with it? I know that they gave us an update, but when will it be available?
So I would like to address that if I could. Gary Schaefer, Director, Library Arts and Culture. So certainly that is something in the future we can look at different venues. We were probably just over a year ago, and Commissioner Vidor will recall, you know, we had nothing in the Adams Square Mini Park gas station. So we've achieved much. And I just want to, you know, again, thank Jennifer for making sure that that's happening and that we're getting it programmed. You know, I think it's coming down to capacity. And so yes, there is that space on Artsakh. It is, they are going to be starting construction on it. I think if we could, you know, possibly by upping the fees, we might get a greater response to the Adams Square Mini Park gas station. Perhaps we can, if that space is available in Artsakh, we can include it in the call, you know, that we will tell you where your exhibition is, or you can say, I designed this specifically for Adams Square Mini Park gas station. That is the only space it will work. And then I would say, because we don't have other venues readily available to us, it is possible to, as we engage someone to look at the cultural equity plan, equity is equity, and equity is equity of access. As Commissioner Yankett said, could we include in that plan that we ask the consultant to make recommendations for how can we look at creating arts, some sort of pop-up art venue or something that we can deploy in a neighborhood. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but I know that currently we don't have the capacity to take on, doing more calls, putting in more spaces. But I do think if we rolled, if the ArtSoc space is available, that we just roll that into the call for the Adams Square Mini Park gas station. If you would be open to that, I would say that would be a good start towards getting, more of these venues going. But again, it just boils down to a capacity issue.
Commissioner Vidor?
Yeah, I think that I had heard, and in fact, this what we've nicknamed the Wolf Pack, this group of arts organizations that gets together on a monthly basis, where I'm the commission representative. Oh dear, I don't know if you can. Bad time to have a blower, so I'm going to move. But anyway, I think that if I understand correctly, the Economic Development Department has put out some kind of a call recently to fill with whatever people have in mind some temporary spaces. So there is actually a call out right now. And Jennifer was even going to update the group that gets together on a monthly basis at the next meeting because people were very curious about it. So we should consult with her. And then there are other ways we can reach out into the community even before we have a program for other neighborhoods to find out about things. For instance, if we notify all of the local business entities, we may discover that there are temporary spaces available that we know nothing about. So some kind of a, tell us about your temporary space in your business or your business district. That may help us tease out what's available. And then we also have other obvious kind of streetscape issues that become prime targets for art: roundabouts, traffic circles, parkways in the middle of the street, things like that. So perhaps we could gather information and start to tap into the community even before we put a call out for anything.
Commissioner, could I address that? Because I like the idea. So number one, I think LaBasse would be a primary, venue to, look at those parkways and the roundabouts for something permanent. So just a suggestion there. And I think we've talked about that before. But what we could also do is include in the call. So we have the Adams Square Mini Park gas station. There might be other spaces, but we can also say to the artist, you broach a venue, say a vacant store. You get the the person that owns that on board and sign off, just as we would if we're doing a mural. You need to let us know that you have permission to put a mural on that space. And then you propose to us as part of neighborhood arts, the kind of an art exhibition to go in that space, and we will consider it. And what that does is, one, it puts it on the artist to find the space. It's beneficial to the landlord. If the space is empty, it brings interest to their space at no cost to them. It's helps the economy because that might get that space rented. So I think that might be a way to do this. I know it's not super deliberate. We're not saying this neighborhood, that neighborhood, but at the end of the day, if a space isn't available, a space isn't available. And I think that might be an exciting way to get some pop-up art venues going, take the pressure off of us trying to identify locations where those could go and anything involved. I think there are, and we're going to see a lot more vacant stores and that, and it allows basically that landowner, that building owner, to get free publicity, to get their space rented. So I don't know. I think, this is a bit of a brainstorming session. So maybe that's a silly idea, but I think that, you've inspired me in that way. And I think that might be a great way to tackle this. Put more money into Adams Square, but broaden it to neighborhood arts and pop-up galleries and Adams Square. So anyway, thank you.
One thing that comes to mind, if any of you shop in the Glendale Avenue mall that includes Vaughn's and CVS Pharmacy, you know that there are a huge number of glass-fronted storefronts vacant there. And it's just an example. I'm not saying that we should do something there, but now there are so many business areas that have vacant spaces that, it's a great time to give them some opportunities and maybe even help them out a little if there's a rental aspect to it. So, I think maybe as individuals we could reach out. I wouldn't know how to approach an entity like that, but maybe economic development could help us with it. That's my final comment, and I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Arlene. Do we have any other comments?
Yes, that's a great idea with all these empty storefronts. That's great. Gary, I'm wondering, are there any liabilities or anything with the city sponsoring artists on private property, and any costs with that?
Well, I think, and our city attorney is on the call, so he can also address, but I think it would just be written into the contract. And I wasn't thinking of it, but Commissioner Vidor, did mention, there could potentially be compensation for that building owner. We would have to, allow us to budget some monies and then let us investigate that. If we could in fact do that, it would be working with economic development. They have their own plans that they're working on, but we could talk to them and we would just look at the legalities of all that and see how we could best execute it, if at all. But my presumption would be I don't really see so much of an issue. I don't see the city entering into a lease with the building owner. I see it more, even like on a temporary 1-month basis. I see it just more as maybe it's written more as an economic grant. But I do think we need to, we can put the onus on artists to identify spaces. We can put it out via, economic development channels through the chamber, that this program is potentially available. But this is that's a major undertaking. That alone could be one person's job, doing all this. So I think the best way maybe to do it is to package it kind of in neighborhood arts, call for artists, the Adams Hill Mini Park gas station, is a venue. And then, but you are also free to propose another venue, provided you have the owner's permission, and include a permission letter, with it, and make your proposal. And we would just outline, everything that's involved in it. But again, it's a major undertaking, folks. And we might have to put something else aside if we want to focus on that. But it is certainly meeting, maybe no AHA calls, but this is kind of an evolution of AHA. And we just look at something like that. I don't know. We're brainstorming now, but I think that's it's a worthy idea.
Well, for AHA, anyways, most artists look for the space and they come up with
Yes.
where they want to do it. So it's kind of integrated in that perhaps for neighborhood arts, we have available spaces which are at park, and then possibly outside something on the venues that are be established by the city, and just let AHA be the free for artists to.
Can I make a comment?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought somebody was about to answer. I apologize. Yes, Commissioner Yank.
I just wanted to recommend that we take a look at the City of Santa Monica's Art of Recovery project that they have going now, which is it's a $500,000, I think, that was dedicated, and it works very similarly to kind of what we're describing right now, where artists propose a project, but they have certain, they've really delineated like certain goals from the city's point of view that they would like artists to address. So I think one is like economic, spurring kind of economic like activity, so that in storefronts along major areas where people can create more traffic to those areas and maybe help businesses. Another is community connectedness, where different people, it's more about kind of having communities connect with one another. Restorative justice. They have a variety of categories. And then they also have specific priority locations. And they've gone and hired like a consultant to actually work with the artists to try to make connections between spaces. But I'm just aware, as Director Schaefer was talking about, of how kind of complicated that process is. So I do encourage us to look at this idea as more of like an experimental phase, maybe, and maybe it is an evolution of the AHA program, but maybe there's a few more kind of priorities that we put around the framing, of like proposed to us, but not just anything, here's a few priority neighborhoods or a few priority kind of ideas around what the art is accomplishing within the neighborhood. So, different ways to think about it, but I thought that might be a useful example to just take a look at how they're framing that particular process.
Could I address that? So thank you very much. Again, always appreciate you thinking about capacity. The Coral Fellow is going to be making a presentation to us at the next Arts and Culture meeting on murals. If you like what she says, likes how she thinks, we do have an option potentially to bring her back for, I think, up to 2 months. And maybe we could assign her kind of this project, but I like how Commissioner Yank said, not as we can't expect her to do what a consultant who's has done for Santa Monica, but could look at the Santa Monica program, pull from it the best elements, and maybe pilot this as an extension of AHA. And with that, I'm going to just step away for 5 minutes to attend to some other business. Pardon me, I shall be back.
Okay. Did we have any other comments or questions? Yes, Commissioner Vidor?
Yeah, just went on their website, and even the front page of the Art of Recovery website shows some very obvious examples of being able to exploit our local public landscape for artistic purposes. So I definitely agree that that would be a nice thing to do and a nice way to use the Coral Fellow. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. I believe we can go ahead and move forward. I know that Gary had recommended a brief recess for maybe 5 minutes for all of us. Is that something you guys would want to take, or do you want to continue? Yes? Okay, let's all take a 5-minute break, and I guess we can head back after our recess. Thank you.
just checking in to see if people have returned from recess.
Hey, Jennifer, I'm here. So.
Yeah, I'm here.
Just checking in to see if people have returned from recess.
Having my breakfast finally.
Hey, Jennifer, I'm here.
Yeah, I'm here.
Just checking in to see if
Having my breakfast finally. Had like those
much for rejoining us with the Arts and Culture Special Commission meeting. We have resumed from a recess. Chair Zadorian, per your recommendation, would it be possible to move on to the next part of the budget?
Please do.
Okay, I'm going to pull up the screen. Okay. Next up, we have performing arts within the July 2021 to June 2022 budget. This is in proposing that the pandemic is completed and we are able to resume live in-person concerts, and we have reserved $40,000 for the 222 East concert series for 5 concerts a year, and the Brand Library Plaza series, which would be 12 concerts a year, for a total estimated budget of $100,000. So Chair Zadorian, I will turn it back over to you to manage the public the comments from commissioners.
Of course, Commissioner Yank. Commissioner Yank, did you have any comments or questions?
I mean, not really at this time. I guess my only question, not being super familiar with these, is just then when they're proposed to happen, just because I know that the situation is very much up in the air about the time frame. So, you know, if it's not able to happen in 2021, would it happen in the early part of the next of the fiscal year? So that's just my only question about it, or would this not happen in any case?
Thank you for your question.
I'm sorry, Jennifer, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for your question, Commissioner Yang. Typically, the Brand Library Plaza series happens during the summer months. It would be June through August of 2021, pending pandemic. And the 222 East concert series would happen in October of 2021.
So kind of like last year, we actually ended up moving or canceling it. So if there were still issues this summer, we can do the same. I'm going to assume they're both outdoors, so we shouldn't have too many problems, but I don't want to, you know, say that just in case we're not going to be allowed to have any. Does that answer your question, Commissioner Yank?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Vier?
No questions right now. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Vidor?
Just one question about the brand series, and it may have also applied to the 222 East series as well. I just wondered if, I know that we did make a selection, and then of course it got canceled. And I wonder if there's been any discussion. I believe the brand associates mentioned something about, you know, carrying through with the same performers. Would we retain, if we went this year, would we retain the same people who were curated into that program when we last discussed it?
Thank you, Commissioner Vidor. That's an excellent question. You're correct. We would retain the same artists that were chosen for the 2020 series. We have already asked them in advance if they would be available for 2021, and they have all accepted. So they would be retained for this year if it happens.
That's great. And same for 222 East. I don't know too much about that one.
That's correct. The same. Mm-hmm.
It's great.
Vice Chair Tufenkian?
No further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I don't have any further questions as well on the performing arts. I don't think that we need to expand. I think these are 2 great programs and they're great as is. I just really hope we're able to do it this year and we have no problems, because I'm very much looking forward to enjoying the summer in Glendale. We can go ahead and move forward.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the last umbrella, which is arts and cultural events from July 2021 to June 2022. Pardon me. We have the Glendale Art Walk. We have reserved $80,000 as a placeholder for that. There is a question mark next to that for obvious, if not obvious reasons, the pandemic, pending that if that's possible. And sponsorships, we've reserved 63,000. Again, a question mark, because oftentimes the commission has supported events such as Dia de los Muertos or the Open Arts and Music Festival. So this is why there are question marks here. But I will return it back to you, Chair Zadorian.
Okay. Before we go down the line, can you just name some of the sponsorships other than Dia de los Muertos? And if that 63,000 is what we gave last year, where did the 63,000 come from?
In the past, we've given, not last year because of the pandemic, so we did not support any arts and cultural events. But previously, we had supported Dia de los Muertos. We had supported the Open Arts and Music Festival. We had supported the Glendale Tech Week. There was an exhibit that we also produced, sponsored. So this was a number based on what we had kind of supported in the past. The number can be increased, decreased, but that was a number we had used in the past.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Yank.
This looks good to me. No comments at this time.
Okay, Commissioner Vire.
I was just wondering if we support or would we do sponsorships for events if they had to be virtual? I know Dia de los Muertos, so that the Latino Association did a fairly extensive programming for that virtually. And is that something that we would we offer help? Would we offer support, or is that just in response to requests?
I could answer that question, if I may. Gary Schaefer, Library Arts and Culture. So typically what we've done is we have leveraged our sponsorship. So we have sponsored an artist as opposed to sponsoring the event. So we kind of bring the arts and culture component into the event. Well, obviously it's a cultural event, so I can't say the culture, but we bring the art into the event. So we did that successfully with Tech Week, where we actually the sponsorship maybe isn't the correct term. I think it's a catch-all, but we've sponsored. Well, technically we were credited as a sponsor for those events, but actually all the funding went to artists to kind of to have an arts unique and special kind of art exhibit at the event. But we were credited as a sponsor. So that's kind of how we've leveraged our dollars in the past.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Vidor.
Just a question. Thank you. Looks great. The Art Walk funding, does that include, if we were to go ahead with it, a consultant? I thought we had a consultant that we were going to, this is a pretty big labor intensive thing. And so we were going to RFP a consultant for this. Does this money include that?
Commissioner Vidor, that's an excellent question. And yes, you're correct, it does. We had released an RFP quite a while ago, and we had a few applicants that have been on hold waiting in the wings due to the pandemic. So yes, you are correct. That would include their fee.
Okay, and that's been done already. So you have the candidates for the RFP. We would just have to go ahead and select one when the time is right.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Vice Chair Chufenkian.
Does the Art Walk fee, does that also include outreach and marketing?
Yes, you're correct. That would include outreach.
And would we have a leeway to up that?
That is Vice Chair Chufenkian, that's an excellent question. This is absolutely, this is the moment in which, if we would like to expand that budget line, this would be the perfect moment to do so.
Can we have a breakdown of what 1,000 includes? Do we know that?
At the moment, that is a placeholder for the fee that is associated with the organization that would coordinate and run the art walk. That is an estimate based on the proposals that we received for their overall stipend and production costs associated with that. But as of right now, that's just a placeholder. We have not chosen or specific organization to move forward with.
Oh, so they would take the marketing fee out of that 80,000.
Correct.
Yes.
Was that all from you, Vice Chair Tefenkian, or did you have a further?
Not quite enough. I don't know. I'd like to hear from my fellow commissioners. If this is time to 80,000, I think I want to review.
I think that, if I may, Gary Schaefer, Library Arts and Culture, I remember when we had discussed this many months ago, with this was a one-night event. And so I just ask you, keep in mind, how much money do you wish to spend for one night?
Yes, it is one night event, but I think this is one of our big events, and outreach and marketing is going to be critical. And I think we'd want to make as much noise as possible. So I don't know if I don't know if 80 is enough or not. It might.
Actually, I do want to add to that. Is there, when it comes to PR and outreach, I mean, where does the city stand on that, separate from Arts and Culture Commission? Because I know that the city itself does a lot of PR work and emailing and outreach as a city. So I just want to know how much of that is available, if they would also be contributing in any way to this.
So the city would, of course, promote it via their various venues. So you've all maybe you haven't attended, but you're aware of, say, the Parks Department does a car event in the summers and stuff. So the city would, of course, promote it on GTV6. The city would put it out on their monthly news. They would put it in their news feeds. They would put it on Instagram. They would do all that. And they would promote it via their normal venues, but they wouldn't, I don't see them putting additional monies to promote the event beyond that. They're not going to advertise it on, say, KABC. We would send out a news release about it, and if any of the news stations wanted to pick that up. But these kind of events happen all over Los Angeles, so I'm county, so I'm not certain that would get picked up in the broader news, but that would be the city's commitment. I could speak on behalf of them.
Well, I definitely wouldn't, I don't want to say care for, but want TV advertisements, because I mean, not a lot of people would, I just don't think it's as successful. What I'm referring to is more like a citywide, let's say a mailer, some sort of, active outreach to the community, in which it would say, COVID, but he's kind of been shacked up, and this is a great community of, with a diverse group of artists and whatnot, kind of get a lot of people out. Something a little different, because I understand what Vice Chair Tefenkian is saying. It's like, if we're going to do this the first time, I don't want it to be like really not well done, and then we're going to work on it in the future. I want it to be the first time is a success, and we build on that success. And it's a great foundation, because that first event will be the foundation for all of the future. And if nobody has heard of the first one, getting people out for the second year, third year, and whatnot. I just love how they've done Glendale Tech Week, and how the city is very involved in that with economic development. So I do want that kind of activity. Whether that means us putting forward more money, I have no problem with that. In my opinion, I think it's worth every dime that we would put into it. So maybe I want to hear from my other commissioners, but I do agree with Vice Chair Tupenkin that we should up the budget for the art walk.
Okay, so that would be our responsibility to do that, meaning we would ask the consultant to do that on our behalf. The last time I did a citywide mailer, that was not a postcard, so we could just do a postcard. It was a more complex piece, but not that complex. It was $38,000. And that went to every household in Glendale.
Okay. Yeah,
And that included postage and everything.
maybe not to every resident, but I would try to figure out how that would work because you can't leave people out. So that's a lot of households. I understand the dilemma with that. Vice Chair Tupenkin, I feel like you have something to say.
Yeah, I was also thinking of not just within Glendale, because within Glendale we've got different ways to do it. I think I've seen mailers that go out in the utility bill, maybe an insert in there about upcoming events. But I'm thinking maybe, a weekly or more print media and outreaching to other cities and letting people outside of Glendale that on in Glendale, and it's a very special event. So
yes, I agree completely that it should be an insert. I have seen that. That is a great way to get it out to all our citizens, cost effective. I assume that there is a difference in postage. We could cover that cost. Boosting on Facebook for the event. So it doesn't just cover Glendale residents, it's outreach to Burbank, LA, the outer areas. If we can do that, I'm on board with upping the budget. Obviously, we kind of need to know an estimate as to how much these things would cost. Let's say having an insert with the GWP mail. So those are things that we may have to add later, but I mean, Jennifer, what do you recommend? Do we add to the budget currently, or is that just we do that on the budget next month at the meeting? And we just have the discussion now that we are willing to do so.
I think Treasurer Dorian, I think that's a great recommendation. I think now that staff knows the goals in which you would like to foresee the marketing for this event, staff can now work in the next couple of weeks to prepare estimates for what that might cost and add that as a final recommendation for next the February 18th meeting.
Yes, and is it possible to work with the marketing team at the city because it's much easier to work with someone who does the marketing, who understands like the best way to market for the city. If we can get some input from them, just different departments who might be able to help. And obviously, we don't want to take too much of their time, but some sort of PR person in the city.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any further comments or questions regarding the arts and cultural events? No? Okay. I would say next item. I don't know if there is a next item. So Jennifer, what is next?
Sure. So first of all, thank you all so much for your really in-depth and fantastic feedback. It was wonderful to hear all of the commissioners' comments regarding this, and staff will take it back and provide an updated budget for your approval for the February 18th meeting. So thank you. The only other thing that we had as part of the work plan discussion was a discussion on the calls for artists, specifically around cultural pandering and diversity, which we kind of addressed with Commissioner Yank's suggestion of the cultural equity and inclusion plan and the development of that. But that was the next item that was on the agenda.
If I might, and certainly commissioners should weigh in how they feel, but I would recommend that we, in a sense, delegate that to a firm to investigate this for us and come back with concrete recommendations. But I turn that over to you.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
I was just saying that I would recommend that we follow Commissioner Yank's suggestion and do some sort of RFP for a cultural equity plan. And then we ask those experts to weigh in on how best we should proceed with engaging underrepresented minorities.
Okay, I I am on board with that. I don't know how my fellow commissioners feel. I think I'm getting all nods, so that's a yes from all of us. Okay, that's great.
That was the last item on for discussion items, so we are at adjournment.
Perfect. Then we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and joining us in this early morning meeting. Have a great day and be safe. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.